As you just heard in the news today, Canadian folk music icon Gordon Lightfoot has died. He was 84. Lightfoot was hailed as Canada's folk troubadour for his soulful music and stirring lyrics. Tributes are pouring in today for Lightfoot. Now, Rolling Stone magazine tweeted that he was a genius-level Canadian singer-songwriter. His songs have been recorded by legendary musicians including Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, and Neil Young. Bob Dylan has described him as a mentor. John Einarson is a music historian and author. He spent some time with Gordon Lightfoot several years ago for a book that Einarson was working on. And John joins me now. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Marjorie.
How do you begin to describe the loss of Gordon Lightfoot?
Well, it's not that it came as a big surprise. Of course, it's surprising at the loss, but he'd canceled his most recent tour, and that tour was actually booked to replace a previously canceled tour. And everybody kind of sort of was preparing for this in some way or another, that he wasn't going to be around long. But even so, it's so sad because he's, when you think of Canada's contributions to music, of the world, internationally and all of that, what we do best is we greet singer-songwriters, and the top of the heap was Gordon Lightfoot for sure, and he influenced so many others that followed in his wake, including, Joni Mitchell and Neil Young, Leonard Cohen, Bruce Cockburn, and on from there. I always thought he embodied a tremendous sense of Canadianism, of being Canadian. And as I've often said, Canadian singer-songwriters or folk artists, we didn't sing political songs. We didn't sing songs about civil rights. Our singer-songwriters wrote about, in many ways, the love of this land and about relationships, love and loss, and all that sort of thing. And that certainly was Gordon Lightfoot. He once told me when I was with him, he said he wrote a song called Black Day in July, which was a look at, the United States in 1968 and a lot of the civil rights issues and cities burning and all of that. And he said he took a lot of criticism for that because he's a Canadian. Who does he think he is commenting on American issues? And he said he learned the hard way to stick to what he does best, and that is avoiding these kind of political issues and all of that, and just right from the heart, which he does.
So talk about his influence on other artists. How influential was he?
Well, when you have someone like Bob Dylan say that, I think he said something like, whenever I hear a Gordon Lightfoot song, I don't want it to end. I mean, that's the highest compliment from, arguably the greatest singer-songwriter of all. Gordon's words, his lyrics, it wasn't like Dylan, who, has said the words just kind of pour out of him, and he just kind of catches them as they come out and writes them down. Lightfoot labored over all of his songs, and Sylvia Tyson told me in my interview with her that he would spend half a day laboring over one word in a song because the words meant so much to him, and the words are so significant to a song. He was a poet as well as a singer-songwriter. He studied music when he was very young. He studied music and melody at a music school in Los Angeles for a year, and he learned about melody. And when you think of a Gordon Lightfoot song, you hear the melody, you hum, you whistle the melody, and then you hear the words. I mean, that's true talent right there.
Now, you mentioned there Sylvia Tyson. Years ago, you were writing a book on Ian and Sylvia Tyson. The book titled Four Strong Winds, Ian and Sylvia. During that time, John, you visited Gordon Lightfoot at his home. What was that time like, spending, time with Gordon Lightfoot at his home?
Well, it was quite an amazing experience. He was really gracious to invite me to interview him at his house. I was in Toronto to interview Sylvia, and she arranged for me then to go over to interview Lightfoot. Because Gordon has always said that he's always acknowledged that Ian and Sylvia gave him his career when they first recorded some of his songs back in 1965. And he lives in a part of Toronto called the Bridle Path, which is very, very ritzy part of Toronto. A lot of the wealthiest people in Toronto live in this area. And the house looks like the Clampett's house on the Beverly Hillbillies, this beautiful marble and stone building with a circular driveway. But as I pulled into the driveway, there's a ratty old lawn chair sitting on the front porch. And I've since learned from neighbors that he would often be seen sitting on this ratty old lawn chair, just kind of looking out. But he was very warm and welcoming and brought me in, and I spent the evening with him. It's funny, he had just had cataract surgery on his eyes. He was in his mid-70s then, and he said to me, "Oh yeah, listen, I'm smoking a lot of weed just because of the cataract surgery and all that." And I'm thinking, "My God, man, you're in your 70s." We had a lovely interview, lovely time, and shared coffee together, but he did something that I will never, ever, ever forget, and that is he performed my favorite Gordon Lightfoot song for me alone, sitting 3 feet from him, and that was Early Morning Rain. And he said to me, we were talking, he said, when Ian and Sylvia recorded Early Morning Rain, they added a minor chord into it. And he said, I don't know why Ian put that minor chord in. And I knew that. But I said to him, oh, really? Well, where is that minor chord? So he picked up his iconic Gibson 12-string guitar and did the song right in front of me. And he put in the minor chord, and he made a face when he did it. But, I mean, it was the most amazing experience. And, I was really nervous. I've done hundreds of interviews with a lot of big music people, but that was one of the most nervous for me feeling when I interviewed Gordon Lightfoot. But he completely put me at ease. He was a lovely, lovely man.
I mean, to have him perform just for you and your favorite song.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, what an experience.
Yeah, it was. And I guess I kind of fooled him into doing it, but I just figured I'm never going to be in this situation again, sitting 3 feet from Gordon Lightfoot. I got to get him to do the song, so I did. And, I wish I had this on film or on tape or something, because it's indelibly imprinted in my mind, the kind of man he was, how gracious he was, and that song. That song speaks so much about postmodern Canadian society and, sitting there watching the plane fly away and you can't jump a jet plane like you can a freight train. It says so much about, postmodern Canadian society.
Now, at his salute to Lightfoot at the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame Gala in 2003, Manitoba's very own Tom Cochrane said this about Lightfoot, and I quote, "Gordon's songs are works of art, every bit as relevant as classic poetry. But even more importantly, Gordon Lightfoot led the way, and he showed us that you can be true to your roots. You can draw on your influences at home and country, and you can incorporate those inspirations into the fabric of your work and still be internationally successful." When you hear the way that Tom Cochrane spoke about Gordon Lightfoot, I mean, what do you think, John?
I think it's perfectly said. I mean, he brought Canada to the world in his songs, and he painted pictures of Canada to people who have known nothing about Canada. He spoke of Canadians, and he spoke to us as well as, the rest of the world. I taught Canadian history, grade 11 Canadian history, for 30 years in high school, and every year when we got to the building of the CPR Railway, I would get the lyrics printed for the kids, and I would play Gordon Lightfoot's Canadian Railroad Trilogy. And, I mean, I could have spent a week lecturing on it, but that one song said it all. And I remember when I first heard that song in 1965, he uses the word verdant, this verdant country. And I was like 14 years old, and I thought, what does that mean? I had to run to a dictionary right after and look up what verdant meant. But, it means green, of course. But it was the perfect metaphor. Only Gordon Lightfoot could have come up with that.
Yeah. Well, John, I really do appreciate you taking the time to join us today here and sharing your incredible stories and your experiences of the great Gordon Lightfoot. Thank you so much for being here today.